Israel continues to ramp up its preparations for a possible ground incursion day after day. Over the past weekend, Israel implemented a tight blockade and a heavy barrage of artillery shells in Gaza, subjecting its residents to living hell before losing electricity and internet in the Strip. These attacks have further raised the level of the ground offensive in Gaza by Israeli forces. Last night marked the most devastating battle with Hamas yet, leaving Hamas militants and the 2 to 3 million Palestinians trapped on the coast with no apparent escape. Israeli forces are massed in Beit Hanun at the northern edge of the Gaza Strip and appear to be advancing south from that position. Rafah, the border city with Israel, has been one of the most affected in this conflict, enduring constant and heavy artillery bombardment by Israeli forces. The city of Chero, mostly evacuated and deserted due to these relentless attacks, is a clear example of the devastation caused. The Israeli army has announced an increase in the pace of its operations. Although we have seen visual evidence of the magnitude of the bombing through videos from Gaza and the border area, the communications blackout makes it difficult to get an accurate view of what is really happening. Israel has deliberately disrupted communications for this purpose, hampering the United Nations' ability, for example, to coordinate with its relief operations offices in the region. With Israel's relentless bombardment, Gaza is on the brink of total destruction. Many homes have been reduced to rubble, and sadly, numerous lives have been lost. Since the Gaza Strip is only about 30 miles long, the roar of the explosions can be heard miles away, affecting the entire region. The Israeli military is clearly making efforts to clear the tunnels in anticipation of an imminent ground attack. Special forces are likely carrying out reconnaissance to identify targets that could be targeted by airstrikes. It is possible that as the tanks may be more vulnerable to daylight, some of them have been removed, although the exact situation remains uncertain. The buildup of Israeli military forces and the mobilization of more than 300,000 reservists initially made us think that an invasion of Gaza was coming on all fronts. However, what we are witnessing is a gradual clearing of parts of the Gaza Strip, practically in segments. This follows from the tone of comments issued by the Israeli military, which emphasizes that they will continue to apply pressure and that this constitutes a recovery. We could describe it as a prolonged raid or a large-scale ground offensive. It is evident that Israeli pressure on the ground will unfortunately result in the loss of Palestinian civilian lives. The more Palestinian lives are lost, the greater the outrage will be among both Israel's allies and adversaries in the Middle East. While this does not guarantee an escalation of the conflict, it does increase volatility and uncertainty in an already fragile region. On top of all this, the main challenge on everyone's mind, particularly Israel's, is the intricate tunnels that extend throughout the city, a complex underground labyrinth built by the militant group Hamas throughout the densely populated Strip. From Gaza, these tunnels hide militants and, even more worrying, more than 200 hostages. The release of Yossi Beilin, an 85-year-old man, by Hamas recently has confirmed suspicions that the militants have used these tunnels to hold hostages. The task of clearing and destroying these tunnels is essential if Israel is to dismantle this clandestine infrastructure. However, if battles take place in densely populated areas or underground, the Israeli army could lose some of the technological advantages it currently has. On the other hand, if Hamas moves the conflict underground, it would have advantages both above and below ground, as suggested by John Spencer, former head of urban warfare studies at the Institute of Modern Warfare at West Point, until his retirement from the army. The United States as a major. I often use the analogy of walking down the street and feeling like you could get hit in the face at any moment to describe this situation. Urban defenders have had time to plan their strategic locations and evaluate the multitude of secret locations at their disposal. They have the ability to determine when the confrontation will occur. Even though they cannot be seen, they have the ability to keep an eye on you. According to the Israeli military, its planes carried out strikes against more than 150 underground targets in northern Gaza. These targets included underground tunnels, battlefields, and other underground structures. As Israel stepped up its ground operations in Gaza, it carried out what appear to be the most extensive tunnel bombings to date. Since the Hamas movement took control of Gaza in 2007, Israel and Egypt have imposed a blockade on the region as a form of collective punishment and retaliation. In response, the terrorist organization increased the construction of a network of tunnels in order to smuggle weapons and other illegal products from Egypt. Although most of these cross-border tunnels have since been closed by Egypt, Hamas is believed to still maintain an extensive underground network stretching throughout Gaza. In 2021, Hamas political leader Yahya Sinwar claimed that the terrorist organization had a network of tunnels spanning more than 500 kilometers. Importantly, the territory of the Gaza Strip covers only 360 square kilometers, which is approximately twice the size of Washington, D.C. Although it has been stated that about 100 kilometers of these tunnels have been destroyed, even if this claim is accurate, would only represent 20% of the tunnel complex. Since at least 2001, when a tunnel was used to detonate explosives under an Israeli border checkpoint, the Israeli military has been acutely aware of this threat. The Sabra or Whistles detachment of the Israeli army has been tasked with identifying and eliminating tunnels, often making use of remote-controlled robots for this task. When entering these tunnels, Israeli forces carry oxygen tanks, masks, and other essential equipment. In the past, Israel has attempted to destroy the tunnels using aerial bombardment and ground explosives simultaneously. However, to permanently eradicate the Hamas threat, it will be imperative to eliminate tunnels that militants could use to ambush Israeli forces or emerge behind advanced lines. Hamas militants have in the past demonstrated their ability to infiltrate Israel through a network of underground tunnels, resulting in the deaths of at least 11 Israeli soldiers during a conflict in 2014. One particularly tragic case involves Lieutenant Hadar Golden, an Israeli officer who was killed after being dragged into a tunnel in Gaza. Since then, Hamas has kept Golden's body in its possession. Ariel Bernstein, a former Israeli soldier who participated in this fighting, described the urban warfare in northern Gaza as a fight involving ambushes, traps, hiding places, and snipers. Bernstein had direct experience of the fighting during that conflict and compared the situation to fighting elusive figures. Yoav Gallant, Israel's defense minister, warned Friday night that he anticipates an arduous and prolonged ground offensive. Gallant stressed that it would take considerable time to destroy Hamas's extensive tunnel network. Since the start of the conflict, Israel has stopped all gasoline shipments to Gaza as part of its strategy. According to Gallant, Hamas intends to appropriate the fuel needed to power the generators that keep air circulating in the tunnel network. Gallant emphasized that to have air, they need oil, and to have oil, they depend on us. In most cases, contemporary forces have relied on punitive airstrikes to dismantle the tunnels and achieve their objectives. According to reports from the Gaza Ministry of Health, Israeli attacks on Gaza have resulted in the tragic loss of more than 7,300 civilian lives over the course of this conflict. However, the damage that can be inflicted on the tunnel network through these attacks is relatively limited. As has become clear, Israel is not giving ground to its adversaries and continues with its strategy. Unfortunately, despite repeated warnings, Israel continues to hinder the entry of humanitarian aid into Gaza amid this ongoing conflict. An active conflict is currently underway in Gaza, and we appreciate your interest in keeping us informed.